Good evening, good evening. Sorry, a little bit later than planned again to stream, but to be honest, there's not a massive amount to say, at least on the usual things anyway. I'm not gonna go into detail on every single thing because nothing has really changed since the last few streams I've done. I might just have a look at a couple of things on Bitcoin, Ether, and on the total market cap charts. Have a quick look at those, but yeah, like I said, there's not much to comment on. So we haven't so obviously we're retracing the drop on Bitcoin. Let me put my what do you call it? I can't remember the code now. To get the mouse, yes, there we go. Yeah, so obviously we had decent drop on Bitcoin on, was that Monday? Sunday, Monday, and we're retracing that. So I didn't stream this, but I talked about that zone. I ended up putting an alert on this 3-day zone. I was a little bit conscious if we could go higher. I swear as soon as I get on stream, I start coughing. Not coughing the rest of the time, maybe it's as soon as I start talking. Anyway, so yeah, I said, this was the provisional, at least to get a scalp or something entry, but that obviously there was a fair chance it was going to go higher, for a few reasons. One, because it's taken out the low of the previous week, or was that the previous month, in fact, and has got back above. So therefore, it could then start trying to take out this wave. Like, it's probably going to close the week on, or it closed the day on a swing failure. I think, no, it did close a little bit below on the day. But it's back up in weekly supply, having already tested it. So yes, we expect the retest could come back and take out that high, given it's taken out the weekly low, so it could take out the weekly high, and it did leave a double top up there as well. The only thing with that is the CME pair didn't. The CME pair did take out the high on that second test. Seriously, this cough. I'm going away to Thailand next Wednesday, so hopefully when I'm there, I'm going to A, deal with the smoking, at least reduce it, if not zero it, and B, hopefully just get healthier in general, because I've been quite unhealthy for the past couple of years, and I can't seem to change it. So the plan is to go to Thailand and start a whole new life, just for a month anyway, and then bring the life back. Anyway, so yeah, we had the rejection off the 3-day here. Then we had a new daily demand below, which I talked about. I think I just posted about in the Telegram channel. I said I was a bit wary of this because we are obviously still in a downtrend. We're still coming off weekly supply. We had this new 3-day supply inside. So I was a little bit wary of it, but I eventually did set an alert, but for the 8-hour a bit deeper inside it. Given now what we've done, I probably expect that to hit over the weekend. So that was closer to the 61 fib. There were a couple of walls there at, I think, 78k. They were a little bit above, but again, you normally expect the walls to get run through. And then, yeah, it was the 61 fib, plus I think there were some liquidations a bit lower in the zone, so maybe around the 76 mark. So I thought we'd get a bit lower than that, but we didn't. And obviously now gone back up. I didn't put another short in for the retest, again, for the same reason that I said before, that we have the 2 CME gaps up here and here. And then I've set another alert. I think there's just an hourly up there that I thought, okay, maybe if it retraces some of this drop candle and closes CME gap, that was worth watching. But I have put in the comment, just there are, a few things. So if I look at the lower time frame chart, if you recall, which hopefully is going to load. No, I don't want to delete the alert. So if you recall, why is that alert just staying there? Okay, so back in when we hit this high in March, I had an alert for the 8-hour, and then there was also an untested hourly a bit above, which I was hoping would come back for on Wednesday. I did eventually put in a lower high alert. I actually was hoping it would come back for it here, but it just dropped straight off. Then I put an alert for a low high there, which got a decent drop. Then we had a long alert, which obviously got run through, and I'd said it was very high risk anyway, and I only wanted to take that if it closed back above this level, which obviously it didn't, and in fact rejected straight off it when it came to test it. But yeah, because of that untested hourly up here, and then the double top that we've got, then obviously there's this entry here is also somewhat risky. So I think I put the entry there on the hourly, and there's a 2-hour a little bit higher, but So next zones, like if we do go up from here, are going to be this 86k area, where there's an hourly, two hourly supply and a weekly level. If it closes above there, actually, I think maybe it will flip the weekly to demand. Yes. So I'll get to that, I guess, on Sunday, once I see what the weekend does a little bit more. And then, yeah, like I say, so obviously then looking for the possibility of a swing failure into this missed hourly up here. And this is obviously low time frame. From a are we reversing perspective, it's always possible, I guess. We keep having a drop and we're having this slow grind down, and it can be a bit hard to know when it's just going to suddenly throw a massive green candle. So I tend to avoid, not to try really to think too hard about when that's going to happen, because you get a lot more trades trading up and down on the lower time frames rather than just kind of every time buying the low and calling a target of 96k. But from a is this the bottom perspective, we've done the swing fail of the weekly here, so like I said, we could take out this weekly high, but obviously my preferred entries are still sub 72, and yeah, so while obviously we could come back up here first and then drop down to 72, so we trade both directions on the hope and just see what zones are created, my preference would still be to look for the bigger picture longs lower than where we've got to at the moment. So yeah, to the downside, if we get a hit on this 8-hour demand inside the daily at the weekend around the 61 fib, then great, that's a potential long entry. Short entries, potentially 1 hour, 2 hour supply up here, possible swing fail of these two highs from early April and late March. And then if we get through all that, then I'd be looking, yeah, just a lot higher, I guess. We'd already came off the monthly supply here. And there was a weekly 5-day just above that hadn't been tested. And there's various lower time frame kind of zones of interest up there. So I would just, see what happens when we get there. And also, I want to be sure, this is Bitcoin. I want to be sure that the bottom is in before I start looking at fibs for retracements and things like that, because otherwise I keep moving them every 5 seconds and it's irritating. So to the long side, obviously, like I said, down below 72k, and there's various zones in there. It's a difficult one because there's a big 3-month zone, and then there's 2-day, 2-week, 2-month, 1 month, 3-month inside it. And I think sort of my preferred-ish level was around the 66 mark. Again, that's the 61 fib. It had some confluence. 69k, I think, had some confluence with other markets. But yeah, so maybe a bit deeper than these top levels. But it's difficult because, we're having this slow grind down. And as I said, with these question mark entries that I had here, both of those work quite well, despite the fact they're sort of interim zones. And, even the low here, which I didn't have one on, it's come off a 4-hour demand. Yeah, it could bounce from here if it wants to, but it's just not my preferred entry from a bigger picture perspective. So yeah, those are the zones of interest to consider. If we do close above, 82,500 today, then we're going to create a new daily demand. So again, that might change my opinion slightly. Or we could well get a bounce off that over the weekend and at least get a move up into here, if not more. But typically, like weekends, typically Saturday is quiet, but Sunday has been having more action lately. So tend to advise to take the day off on Saturday and then see where it's at on Monday. And what we have often had also on the Saturday is consolidations like this, or particularly when we had a quiet Friday, we have then quiet Saturday with a consolidation, then it becomes quite clear the direction it's going to go in, or it's giving a little triangle to trade. So yeah, that's it on Bitcoin. I don't think there's anything else that needs to be said. Yeah, on US dollar dominance, it's the same as previously. We came down. I was looking for that bounce on 2-day demand, which we got. We've rejected daily supply. Again, I wanted higher, and the confluence would have been better there. But again, just need to see this retest. Are we going to hold a retest on this 2-day, or is it going to start drifting lower at this point? But again, with this, I want lower on Bitcoin. I want higher on this, preferably up now in the 3-month zone up there. Whether I get it is another matter, but if we start flipping some of this support, then obviously I'll be more inclined to short, but for the moment, while it's a messy up move, it's still an up move, and Bitcoin is still a down move. So yeah, that's the long and short of it on Bitcoin, I think. And I think we're like at the moment, I don't think CME is going to give any particular resolution, like it's not going to create a weekly demand or anything like that, I don't think, but I will double check that at the end of the day. Ether obviously was weaker anyway. BTC pair is still pretty horrible. Excuse me. So BTC pair, obviously, again, in a zone we hope for a bounce, but we've had many of those zones, as we know, and we just don't really get any bounces. So here, it's sort of approaching this sort of historic monthly level. I don't know what that must be. It's not monthly, it's a higher time frame, so 6 monthly 11, in fact, for a retest. Let's change that. It's at a weekly, I guess, inside again, if I haven't. So yeah, it's hitting a weekly zone inside this 2-month zone. You know, obviously we're praying for a higher low here, but the expectation is now, you know, so what I would have wanted on Ether, I guess, like, so I was looking for bounces on these higher zones up here, like monthlies. So if this was bullish, and if this was just a retest correction, and then a triangle correction, like you want then the bounce to be on a higher zone, because then it might have the impetus to get higher. What alternatively you can get, so that'd be a triangle correction, what alternatively you can get is a zigzag correction. And now we've come, so one, we could still bounce here and could still make a very weak triangle. What is looking more likely now is that we're going to end up down in here. And I think the Ether dominance pair, next few days or weeks, BTC will be at 105,000. Well, you may be right. I can't say I agree. So the structure from my perspective is a hard no for that. But we can only see. If we start flipping, if we go up and we flip that monthly supply to demand, then great, you might be right. But yeah, I'm not optimistic. We say next few days or weeks, possibly weeks. So, you know, if it gets down into the 3-month demand below, like below 72k, and then gets a decent bounce for there, then yes, I might agree with you. Days, no. Weeks, perhaps. But anyway, Ether at this stage, with this horrible drift of death, which looks like it should end in one giant red candle with the momentum that's coming down increasing. So far, we're not seeing that momentum decrease. But yeah, at this point, I'm kind of probably expecting this to break that low there. And yeah, the other thing I guess I wanted to say is, again, I've drawn this many times on the Ether US dollar chart, but you know that when we go up and we have a test, so this is demand, that we've got this test, and then we're coming back, but this demand hasn't been enough to break the high. You know, even if it had done that and broken the high, like it hasn't been enough to break the sellers here, these buyers. So coming back to here, this is weak demand, and we can see it get a bounce possibly, but at the moment it's weak demand. So and the US dollar pair has proven that in the very bearish structures that I've been drawing on that for, you know, the last few months. Excuse me. Okay, so the US dollar pair, excuse me, my chart's really messy again because I put back the 8,000 fibs I had on it. I might just hide those quickly. Difficult when we have so many waves down, because I mean I don't know if I'm not great at fibs, or I don't know if other people, that means that other people are better, or whether I'm just too analytical about it, I don't know, or whether they're just not that useful. But I guess when you've had like a drift of death like this, it's trying to make that decision as, you know, is that the first move, and then, you know, when you fib this last wave, you fib from here. Or, you know, at this point now we've done 2 waves down, or ABC perhaps, and, you know, maybe you should just fib the whole thing because maybe it's going to correct the whole thing. Or if you then look at lower time frames, then obviously you've got a whole bunch of sub waves. So I've talked before about how Ether likes a 61 fib, and it really just seems to do it no matter which wave you look at. But again, yeah, at this point, you know, it's now come down here. Do I want to look at a 61 fib from there, or do I want to look at one from here, or even that high in the middle there? So hence I just do lots and lots of different fibs. Anyway, I was hoping Ether would get a decent bounce from here, which it didn't compared to Bitcoin, obviously because the ETHBTC pair is dropping. It obviously has held a higher low here on the 4-hour demand from there. So again, like if Ether comes up here, I was slightly more conservative based on where the fibs were. Actually now I've hidden them all, but the 61 I think is lower, and obviously it's lower again, I think maybe below the green line for if you do the smallest wave. And from there I think it's also at the base here. But because Ether left this sort of little triangle of stops here last weekend, and because ETHBTC was finally approaching, you know, like proper support, I kind of thought, you know, maybe we would get that move up, and we might still, but so far we haven't. Obviously, you know, the pump we had with the tariffs on Wednesday hasn't approached anywhere near this area. So yeah, I went slightly more conservative on the alert. So there's an 8-hour supply that hasn't been tested in here. There's two bigger 2-day, and then the bigger weekly. So again, still in this downtrend. I also was looking more at zones up here, and so I put a circle around that one because, as you know, there were loads of areas that I was potentially interested in for shorting. This was kind of becoming my preferred one now, because it's at the 3-month supply level and it's this weekly. And it might go up inside it. I still don't like the stops above there. And also this was based on fibbing not from the current low, but from if we went to 1300. So again, I want to see where the bottom's put in, and then I'll look at where the 61 fib is on that. Last I checked, let me have a look, there were a bunch of walls at 1100 to 1200 on Ether, like a proper stack. And obviously those can get pulled out, so we just need to keep an eye on it, like if you are trading it based on that. But yeah, so my alert for I think the 3-month zone is at 1300, or just above 1300. So these are the Ether walls. Yeah, so you can see here on the Binance pair, this massive stack that's from 1070 or 75 to, and they're not huge walls, but there are just a lot of them all together, but to about, yeah, just under 1200 to maybe 1080 to 1180. So I'm interested as to whether those are going to be targeted. Jesus is Lord, where is the chart? I'm not sure if you mean this or my normal charts. Yeah, my normal charts are really busy, and if you don't follow me normally, then you probably will have no idea what I'm on about, which is the difficulty. This is the trading light, what do you call it, like heat maps. So yeah, that's obviously why this is obviously messy. But I guess you might be referring to my own personal charts. Anyway, yeah, so 1100, 1200 is kind of where I'd be interested in Ether if it comes down. So yeah, currently my alert for the long side is at 1328, because that's where the 3-month level is, but again it could dip and also fill these couple of CME gaps that are left down here, so it could dip lower. In fact, it would be potentially to the bottom of that monthly. But I guess, yeah, people are now looking at this whole thing being support. This last hurrah kind of support level, and hoping for that bounce. So yes, Ether, I remain bearish until we break supply. So on both Bitcoin and Ether, I remain bearish until we break supply and hold demand. BTC has obviously started to hold demand, but still has higher time frame supply above. Ether, well, we held a 4-hour demand, but only with a very, very weak bounce, and I haven't got anywhere near supply. The other issue I had with Ether as well was this rejection here off the 3-month level. So it looks kind of like a bit of a random rejection, and this obviously we haven't confirmed a close below that 3-month. But this always does concern me slightly, and why I have the levels drawn in even long before the close. Okay, so, you know, it's slightly above. Lost my mouse, hold on. It is slightly above there, but yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't really want to see another test of this reject again, and that become like a proper resistance with, you know, with a new weekly supply or something. If we end up consolidating here and then closing back below, because that I think would be pretty bad. But yeah, at the moment, Ether, I remain bearish. There is nothing really to make me bullish, other than, yes, we are at support, but so far no sign of actually changing structure. The low time frame chart, which, Jesus is Lord, if you're referring to my chart being busy, like those are the high time frame ones. These are a hell of a lot worse. Yeah, so like I said, I had the first possible short entry was above this consolidation from last weekend because of the trend line stops and the 8-hour supply up there. So that's 1870 or thereabouts. Then we had this 3-day a little bit higher that just got missed. Excuse my notifications, that just got missed on the test back from the start of April. So yeah, those are the next two zones I'd look at for the possibility of shorts. And the possibility of longs, like I said, I still want, you know, that 3-month zone below 1300 or at 1326, and then potentially even deeper inside of that zone because of those walls that are running from 1100 to 1k. Or sorry, no, 1200 to 1k to 1200 to 1100. But yeah, so potentially deeper inside this zone. But again, my alert is for the 3-month at the top, and we'll just see. Whether that's going to happen imminently, I'm not sure. On ETHLink in comparison to Bitcoin, so I noted there was a 4-hour demand here. I did not alert for long. I said that people could take it if they wanted to, but part of the reason I didn't alert is because when Bitcoin was coming down, I could see Bitcoin coming into the daily, and this was already at the 4-hour. And because I wanted Bitcoin lower inside the daily on that 8-hour demand below 77,600 for that long entry, I then wasn't confident the 4-hour would hold on Ether. But unfortunately what's happened is obviously Bitcoin's bounced higher on the in just at the top of the daily, or a little bit inside the top of the daily, and moved back up, and therefore Ether has held the 4-hour demand there. Anyway, that's kind of all I want to say on those, because like I say, I've done so much analysis on them and they haven't really changed much. Just check my stream is running okay. Yep. And I'm gonna light a cigarette. On the majors, again, I said BCH was the one I thought was going to be strongest, and that has turned out to be the case. But BCH is now not far off 3 months supply, so you know it could obviously run a much higher in the 3-month supply if it wants to. But I've put the alert there just provisionally, just to check the reaction. And then we'll see. Like, and it's still in a bigger 6-month demand, and in a 1 month inside the 6 month. So that could still easily beat the 3-month supply, or you know, like I said, it can go significantly higher in the 3-month supply if it wants to. But yeah, I've just provisionally set that alert for the 3-month zone there. All of these I said in an update yesterday in the channel that you could take longs on, actually all except EOS, that you could take longs on the the daily or the 12-hour demands if you wanted to. So Litecoin's held the daily demand, XRP's held the 12-hour, and BCH held the 12-hour. So well done if you took those longs. And yeah, other than that, again, I haven't changed anything particularly. All the short entries, I'm pretty sure, remain as where they were and where I've talked about previously. EOS is obviously the only one that was slightly different because the structure has now changed on this, and I may have to like remove it, given it's been rebranded and is now not doing its own thing. I may have to remove it from the majors list, because the whole point of the majors is to get confluence, and if it's doing its own thing, then it's not going to give me confluence anymore. Having said that, you know, despite this sort of random breakout it had, we've had 2 really nice re-entries on the short side, and it's now back in 12-hour demand. I've got an alert a little bit lower on this 3-day, 4-day for a possible long, and failing that down here. New majors. So again, the same applies for BNB, ADA, DOGE and Link, like they all had daily demands, and I think in fact, so no, ADA and DOGE have both tested the daily, Link and BNB tested the 12-hour. So again, they're moving up. I don't think I've put new supply entries on these. Again, the entries now for shorts are quite far away, despite the fact they all have weekly supply. And I haven't really thought it through a little too much, but I've been reluctant to move the shorts lower on these based on the fact that BNB annual demand, Link is also in annual demand, but I think all 6 months, and now in a monthly inside it. DOGE is in annual demand, and ADA is in 6-month demand. So if these do pick up now, or at some point in these like very large zones, then they could have very big moves. But we are still very much, again, like Bitcoin, in the down structure, and they still need to break some supply. And so far, yes, we're holding a local demand structure, but so far it is just a correction of the last down move. And it's only if we start making a higher high. BNB is a little bit of an exception, actually, because it's still it's a sideways more than a down. But I mean, you can see from like Link, for example, go back to the daily, that you know, I've talked about this before, but if anybody's new to the stream, hi Mazrakul. So you can see here, for example, you know, this started making daily demands and was bouncing and holding all of them, but it got back up into the local supply, and it was just a correction of this last down move, and then it's fallen down to make a lower low. So now we're potentially in a similar situation. You know, we've made a daily demand there. You know, it's come back to test it. You know, it could just do this and then make another down move. So until it's broken this high, we're not we're not in an uptrend. We're just in a local uptrend. However, having said that, like I say, I'm conscious of the fact that we are, you can see my big brown zones, these are major demand zones. So at any point, this can suddenly go like that if it wants. So thus we're starting to look for long entries. And I already did that here, like these had all made 3-5 day demands, but unfortunately they didn't hold. This also said they were tentative because they were still in a downtrend, but they didn't hold for more than just little bounces after the previous wave. So again, just need to see, and what we'll also see on these, so again, from the FOMO perspective, like I never support FOMOing into anything. You know, you can enter on the lower time frame demands in here. You know, if you'd entered on that daily on DOGE, you would potentially be in this already, and then you just see the reaction when it gets to supply. But what we'll also normally find is that one or two will start going first. So you might find our BNB, didn't draw there for some reason. BNB will go up and start and break supply, but you know, maybe DOGE and ADA won't have done yet. So then you just look at entering the ones that are behind the pack, like once the potential reversal has started. And on top of that, also what I've said previously is I don't at this stage think that the market cap charts support a reversal as yet, but we shall see. So again, exactly the same scenario here. Sol had daily demand and 12-hour, it's come off the 12-hour, and actually no, these are a little bit different. So I said before that DOT and NEAR were the weaker ones, so I like NEAR because it's on this 3-month demand, but what I really didn't like was the BTC pair. So on neither DOT or NEAR, I think the BTC pairs look horrendous. So these are the ones where, while I like NEAR on the US dollar pair, I'm a bit skeptical on the BTC pair. And the DOT, that was the only one I think that now I wanted a bit lower onto this 3-day demand before looking for longs on that. Sol on the other hand has hit a monthly zone, so that's actually coming off nicely now. But again, this Sol is a bit like BCH, it's got a 3-month supply not far above, so again I've set the alert there, and I would look for a swing fail of this March high. Well, sorry, not the March high, maybe it's the March high. No, not the March high, but the late March wave high. So I potentially look for a swing fail there, but obviously it can go higher in supply if it wants to. And then Atom, as I've also said, I've left alone because this has just been annoying me. It's been one of my weakest pairs for entries, and it keeps just running through every zone I put because but to be fair, I'm putting all the supply and demand, a weak supply and demand in this case. So I still think this is probably going to go up, but I'd rather look for shorts up here and longs down here than still continue to trade this mess in the middle. So that's all the majors. Then just quickly on the market cap charts. So Total was the only one I was actually kind of okay with. So this one hit the 2-week demand down there again, like Bitcoin. I would have preferred it a bit lower on monthly demand. 61 fibs, like a little bit under that wick, and a 2-monthly demand. Then it's also got a yearly level a bit lower. So in a perfect world, it would have gone a bit lower, and we might still get that. We still have a weekly supply above. So from the weekly perspective, it's still in a downtrend. But we have got 5 waves of a downtrend. We have hit a major support zone. But the issue we've had so far is obviously that's been the case on many things, and then we're just not seeing the bounces, and the retracements on this drop that we've had, particularly on alts, has been horrendous. Bitcoin comes down very nice and slowly, but alts and Ether even have just been awful. And in fact, the majors haven't even been that bad, but Ether I no longer consider a major because it's just been horrendous. So anyway, obviously this has come off a decent zone, but is re-approaching supply now for this second test. So yeah, if Bitcoin breaks out and this goes higher, you know, if this flips this weekly supply to demand, then great. If we get a new daily demand today, then maybe you could even take aggressive longs for the weekend, but I would be wary of the weekend. But while, you know, it looks like we've had some nice decent green candles, you know, don't forget we are still for now in a downtrend, and we need to break that high, come back, retest to get proper long entries. But at least I like where the low is on this. In contrast, Total 2, and these are, you know, Total 2, Total 3, others, all of the others, they're again a bit tough. You know, they're all in 2-month demand, they're in these large zones, but obviously we've seen Ether break this zone now, so Ether is equivalent to being down here now in this structure, and that's kind of my concern. So I think these are being held up by the fact that the majors like Ripple, Link, Sol, etc. are stronger. But this still really very much looks like the Ether structure. And yeah, so it concerns me that we're going to run through this zone as well. But again, you know, we are still on support, but my bias remains short. So this has got daily supply a bit above, and then I think the weekly there was already tested. Yeah. So Ether is the same, it's much more like Ether, this chart, but you know, on the lower time frames at least, so it did test the weekly supply in there and it dropped back down, and it has a daily and 2-day immediately above here. So again, still thinking this is in a downtrend until I see some supply broken. Total 3, exactly the same scenario, and in fact Total 3, like, I really would want a bit lower on this. So this is cleaner than the Total 2 chart. But it hasn't retraced to the start of this impulse yet, so I still am inclined to want another wave. Sorry, thought I had the brush on then. But yeah, I'm still inclined to want another wave down. And I guess the difficulty is, like I say, we have had very few retracements on these, very small retracements, like no big bounces like we got, for example, over here. You know, eventually when this came down, it made a low and had a really decent bounce, took out some supply, but then obviously came to the lower low. But we're not seeing that volatility. And thus on alts, we're just seeing this, like, just red candle after red candle. But yeah, so on this, in my preferred scenario would be that this still rejects supply and still comes a bit lower. Others is more like Total 2 again. You know, it's in this giant zone, it's in this weekly inside monthly, 2 monthly in fact. So could bounce here, still hasn't broken supply, same. And hold on, Total DeFi I think it's pretty much the same, and in fact the Total DeFi is the most bearish of all. And again, want that down, at least on this weekly, if not on the 3 monthly below, in an ideal world. And you know, I guess it can cling on to a higher low here if it wants to, at least. And I've said this a few times on alts as well, that my expectation at this point is probably that we're going to get an inverse head and shoulders. But I was obviously hoping for the bounce to be a bit higher, and obviously now we're coming down deeper. But also, I guess if we get an inverse head and shoulders, a better inverse head and shoulder would be to hit this zone first, because then you get the sloping down neckline, which is more bearish. God, what it will do to alts if that happens. You know, and then we end up coming all the way back down here potentially. But structurally, that is kind of what I still think is the higher probability. Yeah, so anyway, any questions on that, give me a shout. And then yeah, so yeah, there's not much I wanted. I was going to look at a little bit of FX. So yeah, also, so on top of that, we have, so from an FX perspective, we've had craziness. So the dollar has basically broken. Let me go to the higher time frame. So the dollar had an annual demand which gave no bounce at all. It was a weak demand, but it's basically run now all the way back through it. And it's come down to this weekly zone that I actually wanted a long entry back in 2023 and in 2024 on those two lows. I was hoping for this zone and not getting it. And the irony would be now if we get the zone and it runs through it. Hi, Monster. yeah, so that would be ironic. But yeah, so just looking at what kind of bounce we're going to get off this zone. And, you know, is it going to create monthly supply, or are we going to travel down now to this annual level at 96? So yeah, obviously we've had quite a nasty what's that, couple of months for the dollar. And I don't mean to go to that, but yeah, obviously a very good couple of months for gold, good years for gold. So from an indices perspective, again, they have done very little today. So I had, like I said on, when was it? When did we have a pump? Wednesday. So I said on Thursday that I only had NASDAQ and Australia 200 hit the zones that I wanted shorts from. So I was hoping to get a little bit higher on CPI, which I didn't get. We did then get the fall the next day, so they're quite nice shorts for those. But now obviously we're coming back up and it's looking like we're going to break a bit of supply here. So I still wanted a little bit higher on, so the Dow, a little bit higher, S&P a little bit higher, J225 a little bit higher, Russell a lot higher, but Russell's obviously been weaker because I think small business is obviously more affected by the tariff things. EU I wanted a lot higher, but the structure's a little bit different on that. And the same with FTSE, I also wanted quite a lot higher on that. But yeah, so really today has just been like a sideways consolidation for the most of the day, and then finally we got a decent, like the 2 till 6 o'clock candle was a decent green one. But yeah, this has obviously not had much action, which is why Bitcoin hasn't had much action. What else? Well, Bitcoin's now broken the high, so it's going to probably come up into my next alert maybe while I'm still on stream. So it's looking like the CME gap, hold on, let me check. The CME, the lower gap's probably closed. Oh, wrong one. Excuse me. No, not quite yet. So we're close to filling that CME gap. So we left this gap, the close on Friday, and then opened back down here. So that's the lower gap. And then also when we had the drop on Wednesday, last Wednesday, we left the gap up here above. So and obviously they don't always have to. Sometimes they can find resistance to the gap, like it did here, and then similarly like it did here, like at the candles just before or just after the gap, or at the gap level itself. So here, for example, you could find resistance, and then other times obviously we fill it. So at the moment it's looking like we're going to go up to fill this, probably before CME closes, and then as I've said, my potential short entry would be higher once those gaps have been filled. Anyway, so wanted to have a look at a few alts. So if you've got any alt requests, let me know. So the alerts that I've had, so have all been working quite well actually. I found one or two that have gone crazy and failed, but there are ones that I kind of made the comment were potentially a bit dodgy. Let me go to. So I've now got my list, obviously for April is now very long because we've had 11 days and obviously I have thousands of alerts going all the time. So I kind of did the first list, and then I did the first half, or the A's and B's on the second list, and then I started making a third list for what happened over the last few days, or since my last stream actually. But even now that third list is pretty long. But I'll run through them pretty quickly because a couple have hit now, so may give you some imminent trades. Tradingview have made some changes. And I think it's just slow because of my streaming at the same time, but Tradingview have made some kind of annoying changes, which have been slowing me down. No news there. And yeah, they're obviously being a little bit slow to load, and very slow to load all my millions of drawings. So MOG. And MOG's an interesting one actually. So the only thing with MOG is I have to show you. So the reason I am short, so while everybody is now sort of trying to get back into being long biased, I'm still short biased on MOG. Sorry, I have two charts for this, so I have to show this second. Really doesn't help that my computer's completely freezing. So the MOG BitGet chart has more history than this Bybit chart. Oh wow, is it going to be really slow? It's always hard to tell if this is a me thing or if this is an internet thing or if it's a Tradingview thing. So MOG, I had an alert here for just below that low for weekly demand. Now it might have come off this level. I didn't have this level in until earlier today, so obviously it's possible it's held the top of this consolidation here in this 3-day demand, but at the moment I still have the alert for potentially it rejecting and then coming back lower. And I could be wrong, like maybe this is going to be a reversal at this point. But yeah, so that's why I still am potentially looking for a short on this. And I have to obviously go through the faff of getting back to the previous chart, but that is why I have a long entry anyway. Sorry, a short entry, should I say? That's why I have a short entry. So this does still, so like everything else, so again, the structures of these, unless they're new coins, in which case they're just like horrible for the most part, or independent at least. For the most part, all still have this weekly supply, like I just showed on the market cap charts, like they all really look like others, etc. They have a weekly supply and in a lot of cases a 2-day supply as well. So I saw MOG was coming up into here earlier, so I thought that was worth looking for a short. On the lower time frame, it's a 4-day supply in there. It's a level also that I wanted to long when I was looking for aggressive longs last week in case we had the reversal. And yeah, so possibly it's going to one of the things it can do is reject the same level. If I look for a long, it can then reject the level of a short. The other thing is, like, if this fails, so I'll keep an eye on it later, then if it fails, then it might give me the long entry, and if this runs through and then flips this weekly supply back into demand by Sunday, then I might consider like revising my bias. But because of that high time frame picture, my bias is still down in the hope that we're going to get one last move to get into that weekly demand below. But yeah, this alert has like literally just gone off. So again, if you're new to following me, you're looking at what the local structure is. I mean, this is just a 12 hours. So it's up to you how, whether you want to wait to the 12-hour up here, or what time frame you want to look for a breakdown on. But so you can enter here with a stop up here, but then obviously that's a low risk to reward, or you preferably start watching what the structure's doing in here, and if we're going to make 12-hour, 8-hour, 4-hour demand, and then if we break it, then you can sell a retest. So similar here, you wait for that breakdown and then sell the retest of this 8-hour when it comes off it locally. AERGO is another one. Again, this is very high risk, but it was to keep an eye on. So initially I was watching it in here because I thought it was going to make an 8-hour supply, but then it didn't. But I did set an alert up here for this 3-month level. Now it has had a big wick through it previously, so I wasn't sure if it would get a reaction, but then some of these zones can get reactions when price comes back there. And also because I don't know if it might be like a rogue wick on MEXC, without looking at all the other exchanges. I don't know if they all did this, or maybe this zone isn't tested on other exchanges. So that's stuff to do your due diligence on the alerts if you go back for that. But obviously it's had this big up move, and this is on the being delisted from Binance list, I believe, unless something's changed. So I would potentially, I'm inclined to look for a short on anything that looks like this in this current market. And we have like the odd thing, I think, like fun kept going, but for the most part they will eventually, or they will generally quite quickly die. AERGO's been one of the stronger ones, so maybe this is not the best zone, but again, like I say, you wait probably like 6 hours, but if it makes a 12-hour demand in there in 6 hours time, if you're brave, you can long off that. But what I would be waiting for is for this, if this 12-hour demand confirms with a close up here, for it then to come back through, and then I would short a retest of the 12-hour as supply. So yeah, keep an eye on that. AMI, this is, so some of these very new coins obviously are higher risk, so I had an aggressive entry on the 12-hour demand here. At this point you don't really know what it's going to do. I've had other coins that I've started trading, like looking for longs up here, and I look at them a few days later, or a few months later, and they're down here somewhere. So this obviously had a bounce initially off the level, but has drifted down since then. So that was one that went, I think, a few days ago. Got a possible short up there if it revisits, but it's being pretty slow at the moment. AO, this is another alert that's literally just gone off, and it was aggressive, and it might be too aggressive for what Bitcoin's doing at the moment. But again, some of these can, if they work, they can work really well. Man, which trade is this? What do you mean, which chart? So you can see on the top left here, I assume you can see AO USDT. So this is AO. I always wonder if that's clear enough on the stream. Okay, I assume you can actually see it on the stream. Let me just check. Yeah, you should be able to. Up here. So yeah, look at the top left of the screen. So yeah, AO, I had an alert for daily supply. It did actually wick through it and then came back down, but then it made a new daily supply. So I thought it was worth it again. Again, that's an aggressive short entry. Need to make sure Bitcoin's at a high, but this is something you can look at because again, these ones, the point is if they do work, they drop a really long way, and you'll see some of those coming up, and you can see already above here, you know, if you get these aggressive entries on these retests and they don't always retest, then they can really drop if they want to. But now, but then obviously the market has to be in the right place. So if the market's suddenly very bullish, then maybe it's not going to work. I can see this is even wicking around a bit now, but it might be because I'm using the KCEX chart. All of these coins are at least on MEXC. They're not all on like the traditional exchanges, so it depends what you trade, what exchanges you trade. Apex, I think, is another. Please don't be really slow loading every time, it's very annoying. So this is probably a little bit more of a challenge. So yeah, I had a short entry, I think, on 4 or 5 day supply there. There is a weekly a little bit higher. Let me see if that's already been tested. So yeah, the weekly's already been tested, so it's an aggressive short entry. For on that, yeah, so it's a 4 day supply in there. It actually hasn't quite tapped the level, so again, you can watch this coming up and see if it gets a little bit higher inside that zone. And this again, you know, like a bit like MOG, like it may have held up here. But my preference would be in fact down here, although I've got an alert, there's a 3-month level there. So again, still potentially looking for this to give a bigger fall. If we're not going to get that big move in between, because we are overdue that. This is another example actually of sort of, you know, when you do the aggressive. So here I had an entry for 3 day supply, I had an aggressive entry on the 2 hour supply that was created after that, and then you get a bigger drop. So again, that's what you're looking for. Looking for that reaction to be strong. And in this case, you know, on something like this now, you like, given it's got a daily demand, you might want to wait for it to break the daily demand and short again after that, rather than take a low risk to reward from that 4 day. BAN was a long entry. This is a really ugly chart, but there is more history on some other charts. And this is a yearly level on the BitGet chart, so that's why I was kind of biased to looking for longs from that point. So it got the retest of this daily level today. It's left a bunch of stops up here, so this is definitely worth looking for long entries. Hopefully it won't just run up there now. It has made a new 12-hour demand, so I've set a new alert for a retest on this. So if you get a retest in there, stop under here, this could be a very high risk to reward, because I would expect it to take out that orange line if it can hold and does go up from here. But having said that, you know, it is a fairly horrible, messy chart, but, you know, it can just run if it wants to. So I don't know if it's going to run straight from here, but that's something to keep an eye on. BUBB. So this is obviously to the short side. And again, are we going to start to see some of these supplies breaking? So yeah, I had a short on this a couple of days ago in that daily supply there. It looks like it's made a new daily supply. So again, yeah, be careful if they start to flip. But so I had the short there from 2 days ago and went on the tested daily supply. It did come down, but then has come back into the same zone. So I didn't put an aggressive new short on this, so it has come through that immediate daily zone. So this is a point, you know, again, is it reversing or isn't reversing? But something to watch. And then if it goes higher again, I've reset the alert for the 12-hour up here, or 12 or 8-hour supply, 8-hour supply up the top here, because it's a flip level for this monthly level. So I potentially look for shorts up here if it does go higher. F is, I think, one that just hit today, yeah, or in the last 12-hour candle. So that was for weekly supply there. So again, it's had a decent reaction off that. So you can check this on the lower time frames to see if this is going to give you any continuation. And this does obviously like to just hit the zone and then kind of consolidate and die. So again, it might just spend some time here, assuming the market isn't reversing, and consolidate before dropping. I don't know how to pronounce this, so I won't try. This is again one of the newer coins, so this could still easily go up if it wants to. I did have a short alert for this daily supply, which it did reject, but it's come down. So it's a similar structure actually to most other things, or the majors, just on the lower time frame. New 12-hour demand, new daily supply. So is it going to hold? Is it going to break? You know, is this going to go back up into an uptrend? I'm not sure, but I wouldn't want to long it right now, being under daily supply. But I will, if it flips to a daily demand. So if it closes the day above $5.90, creating a new daily demand, then I would be more inclined to look for longs. But at the moment, yeah, it's still a local downtrend, so I'm still short bias, and that would be another short entry if it does get up there. Guns like reverse quite hard, so this is another similar to GHIBLI actually. GHIBLI, the last one I did. Yeah, so I had again a short alert off a 12-hour supply in there. It gave a nice reaction, but came back down into demand, and again has now gone back up through that zone. So I can delete those zones. I need to have a little bit more of a look at this. Yeah, and I did say when this hit, like I preferred this as a short if it had already broken down and made a 3-day and 2-day supply. So by closing below those two levels, I just deleted. So obviously it hadn't, but it did give a reaction, but only back down into 8-hour demand. So again, this is something that could run if it wants to. It has very little history. It's up in a 4-hour at the moment. Just trying to think if I'll set a new alert. So I might set an alert back up there where I previously had the alert on this. So is that a 2-hour and then 4-hour? So if we do now, given obviously the higher lows, it's possible we get a move up. This isn't necessarily a strong zone up here, but just watch for a reaction if it does come there. Charts like these I can often find, but they can give firstly very good scalps in both directions, but also you quite often find that they take out this high, even if it's just for a swing failure and then they die. That's something just to be conscious of. But what they can also do is give just nice bounces in the interim, same as this. You know, it gave a decent short off there, and now it's come back higher and would have given a decent long off this 8-hour demand if you were long inclined. But yeah, I'm going to set the alert for that possible short up there. 2-hour, 4-hour supply, high risk. So yeah, we'll see what happens up there. Quite a nice chart actually. Hold on, let me just look at the long side on that gun chart. Okay, so it's still a day and 6 hours till the 3-day close, but again, if it confirms the 3-day demand now instead of the 3-day supply, so I'll just put, so that's kind of the 3-day, the purple lines are the 3-day range that you're looking at. Let me just check, and even the 2-day, but it's still a day and 6 hours till it closes. But in fact, you know, I actually potentially would be inclined to look for a long on this if it closes with a daily demand. So I'll come back and have a look at this later. So if it closes above this blue level here, I'd be more inclined to look for a long entry, a more aggressive long entry. And it's going to be it's a bit of a difficult one because there's nothing on the lower time frame in that candle because it came up a bit too hard. But given it's a Binance coin and not just a MEXC shit coin, maybe it might be more likely to actually do something decent off this level. So I'll keep an eye on that. I'll keep an eye on that later or tomorrow, that 50 level. K is another one. So again, I had the short entry on this 12-hour, and then I kind of moved the short entry up if it does go higher. So some of these newer coins, I'm going to have to start looking at the structures again just to see if they're going to create new daily demands and things like that for me to flip my bias. But at the moment, you know, obviously still we're in a downtrend here. There was an 8-hour supply there that I had alerted, but it's still thinking about it. And again, some of these, so they look like they're making trend line stops, which always makes me concerned, but they're difficult because they can break up from here or they can break down from here. So I've seen both happen in both directions when they want to. But again, if you're long biased and you want to get some aggressive entries, then potentially wait and see if that creates a why that didn't do what I wanted it to do. If this creates a new 12-hour demand here, then maybe you can look for a long entry off that tomorrow. So it would need to close above 3.69 on this, and then maybe you can look for a long entry on the retest of that 12-hour. So certainly GUN and K I have to come back to, I have to remember that. MNT, oh yeah, I really wanted to be bullish on this back here because I really liked the sort of bull flag it was doing, but unfortunately the market just wasn't, obviously everything going down wasn't supporting a run on this. But it was one of the nicer looking charts, I think. I mean, it still has the same, that sort of same double top structure that Ether has. But in contrast, I think, to a lot of the other charts where, like, at least it's higher relatively. So, still has demand here. Oh, did not mean to do that. Still has demand here. It's a double top and a lower high, so maybe it'll break this low. But other charts that have looked like this with this weak demand are now somewhere down here. So I'm not sure if that means this will catch up or whether it means this is stronger and might make like that triangle structure I talked about at the beginning. So, you know, maybe we're going to get these giant triangles come in. So maybe this will actually triangle, whereas a lot of the others have gone into the zigzag. That was a bad drawing, but you know, the zigzag correction where they've come down, gone up, and then making a lower low. So I guess we'll see. But anyway, I wanted to be more bullish on this because of that, the monthly demand. I had a 2-month or 3-month demand up here actually, but it did eventually come down much deeper. So now it's had a second test on this 3-week zone. There's a monthly a bit below. So from a high time frame perspective, I do think you should keep an eye on this. If it comes down a bit lower, that would be nice. Else watch the lower time frames. At the moment, I have a short entry here on the 5-day supply. And there's a 2-week there as well. So again, I would just see the reaction. So the other thing you can do again is if we get this bounce that goes up here, and then if I see that I was bullish previously, then I'm looking for the long entry. So you know, I don't necessarily have to short this, but what I am looking for is the rejection to then, is it going to give me the long entry if that's a reversal? So it would be sort of similar to here, that, you know, if I'd had an alert here on this, whatever supply was in there, and then it wicked through and came back down, then I'm looking for where can I get a long entry. In fact, you know, in this case it didn't come back down, so sometimes they don't, sometimes they do. You know, here for example, when it's gone through supply, it's come back neatly to demand for the new entries. But yeah, this from a high time frame perspective, MNT is a good one to be watching. MYRO I know is an all-time low, so all-time low trades, assuming it's all-time low, or not just all-time low MEXC, but I alert these just for though you're looking for either the retest breakdown or you're looking for the swing fail for possible long. So in this case, this is a bit of a challenging one. So it did have a decent bounce off that, but went straight back up into 3-week supply, so it hasn't got through it. Or sorry, 2-week supply. In fact, that 3-week isn't confirmed yet. I put in that a little bit early. So this is still an indecisive, but yeah, again, something to keep an eye on. Like if it holds, if it continues to hold this zone, and if it can make some new demand, then you can potentially look for longs on this. Else, if you see it come back up here and reject again, then you could look for potentially very big shorts. Nil. I think this is another one, yeah, another one I've had an aggressive short on, but has now, you know, made either 12-hour or 8-hour demand most likely in there, or maybe not. So again, I had an aggressive short off the 3-day supply in here. No, it didn't actually have any proper demand down here. It did reject, but has come back again for a second go. It's still under the same supply, so it could still reject here, but this just needs a bit more time. It was a bit of a weak 3-day supply in there. I think I might have said 3-day if it confirms, but it already had the 2-day. Hi Smart Abby, and thanks for following, I appreciate that. Yeah, so again, it's cut back up in this, so we're still in the downtrend. Gosh. just being a bit slow to respond at the moment. It's obviously still in a downtrend, so we're still expecting that at this stage. It could go up higher in the zone. If it breaks that, then we reconsider and we potentially look for long entries. If you want to look for aggressive long entries, then like any of these, if they create a new daily demand, you can potentially look for aggressive long entries because maybe we will get the bigger move up. But at the moment, the high probability remains down. NKN, I think, was another one that's all-time, oh no, it's not all-time low. So this is in a 6-monthly demand. I thought maybe this had been delisted or something because it was so ugly compared to so many others, and when everything else is bouncing, it's still continuing down. It is in a 6-month demand, so that was the alert. I've reset the alert for down here if it does break, but obviously you typically wouldn't expect it to break after a first test. But yeah, again, just still waiting. So I think I had the alert and to get a bounce just above the zone, and then I reset the alert in case it came down for a swing fail of that low. But I still don't like the look of it so far. But what I have done on this is set, you can see there's a trend line alert here. So I need to extend that out a bit. So again, what I would hope for on this is I would just wait for the trend line to break. If it makes new demand, then you're looking to long new demand a little bit higher. But wait for the trend line break first. So normally I set those trend lines on the 8 or 12 hour, but in some cases like these, you need to see a decent green candle giving you a decent retest for a proper entry. OIK. So again, that was a nice short up there, so retest of a daily supply and breakdown level. Does now have a new daily demand. Is it going to reverse? Not sure. Things like these, like, I mean, I don't recommend it, but it really is entirely up to you. If you think the market is reversing and we're going to suddenly get a big bounce on alts and Bitcoin and everything, you know, we're certainly long past the stage that we should have had some sort of proper bounce rather than these little lame bounces, and even this, you know, fairly lame bounces we're getting so far. But if you're going to do that, my preference would be not to do it on these ones that are in a downtrend. Stick to shorting, retests on these so you're in the shorts, you know, if we do get the big drop. And if you want to long ones, then look for something that's got history, that has a high time frame demand here, and that isn't just potentially bouncing in the middle of nowhere. Or at least with these, go back and look and see if they're on Dex Screener and they have history here that I don't know about because I can't check everything. But yeah, so I wouldn't be looking for longs on that, but it's on daily demand, so don't be shorting now. ORCA was one that had a big pump today. Really annoying this actually, because I looked at this a couple of days ago and I put in this alert for the daily demand down here, and it did have a weekly and a 5-day, so obviously, but it hasn't quite hit my level, it hasn't quite come back to the start of that impulse. And then I had this alert for 12-hour supply here, which obviously it's hit and had a decent reaction, but again, not sure what this is going to do, so it's made a new 4-hour demand in there, so I don't know if this is going to be one of the ones that now wants to run from here. And again, I was toying with the idea of putting a new entry there. But again, your preference, I mean, it's difficult because so your preference if you're going to have an entry on this daily demand would be for it to break this high first. But it doesn't always have to do that. So for example, here, went up, it came down back to the daily demand here, bounced up, rejected whatever supplies in there, and then came back, you know, because it had this big wick, just came back, but didn't make a lower low based on, you know, being in a down structure. And this is really a sideways structure anyway. But yeah, I'm kind of torn because I still don't really like the low here. You know, I would have preferred this to come down to this 3-week down here, although it is in a monthly demand. But yeah, I'm a little bit torn as to whether to put, but I'm considering that. But you can watch that if you want to, so I'm considering an alert there, but at the moment I'm leaving it on this daily below there. Like I say, because at the moment I'm still, so at the moment all the alerts I'm putting are still erring on the more aggressive and short biased side. So, and if I start to see them break, like, and if they start to become more frequent that they're breaking, and not just on these new things with no history where I'm putting very high risk zones in. But if I start to see, you know, the established coins breaking supply, then I will become more long biased. So on this again, like I said, there's a daily supply in here, so I had the alert there. It did give a decent reaction, but again, didn't break demand. So it's now moving back higher, and it's got more bullish actually. Kind of like don't mind this chart. I think I was thinking even yesterday, yeah, I was kind of tempted to put an entry there, but it closed only slightly above and then retested straight away before moving up. So I want to see a little bit more history on this first, and also because it's got, you know, it's in this sort of crappy daily supply, and then it has this 12-hour here. So if it, you know, it could just come up in here and then reject again. But there's so little history on this, I'd like to wait. So while I put in the high risk entries on things with little history, I still like them to be clean. So this is clean-ish, but because it's already, firstly, already tested, secondly, is a bit messy in there, could go for trendline stops if it wants to come back down. Still at this stage under supply, you know, it makes me then slightly more wary about putting long entries. But actually, now I'm talking about it, I think it's worth having an alert there if it comes back down. I'll tell you why in a moment. Hold on, 8-hour demand of high risk. So part of the reason for that also is this, because that low, so it came down when it opened, it made a low, dropped below it, and if this is potential deviation, so it could go up and then come back and test this zone having deviated the major low. So it's worth considering for a long entry. SIREN I was really bullish on yesterday. This is one of the few charts I actually really like the look of. I put an alert here for 3-day demand. Oops. I didn't like the, so this is similar to what I commented on the trend line stops recently. I didn't like the trend line stops below, but you do see some of them just run up from them. But what I do expect, so what then makes it then concerning, and I have put a long entry in here, but the concern is, like, if this gets up to supply, then the chances are it will do that, and maybe even from here. But again, like, it's one of the things I think it's kind of worth the risk. It's a bit too close to supply. I put this a bit earlier, so it's a bit too close to supply now for my liking. But again, you can just see what happens there on that 12-hour demand if it retests. And I don't know if it's going to make a daily now. No, I mean, it's a bit choppy and messy below. Like, so I don't love that it didn't test my 3-day quite, that I had the alert for at the base. And I don't love the trend line stops. But we'll see, because if you go back to, like, let me show you BAN again. So it's because it's similar, such a messy chart, but when you get these new coins, like this is kind of the thing I expect. You know, when you start having trend line stops, you can get this sort of thing happening, which can be quite painful. I don't know if SIREN's going to do that, but again, it's something with not that much history. It's got the swing fail of the high, it's making stops at the lows. You know, if it has a swing fail of the high, then you potentially expect this to have a swing fail of the low. But it had a nice consolidation through here, so I thought it was worth throwing in a long entry and then a second long entry in case it does manage to at least get back up for a proper test, because I think it missed that. There's a 4-hour supply at the top here that it missed testing, that big drop, so there's people trapped up there that could be wanting to get out. But yeah, so something to keep an eye on. SLC. Oh yeah, this went earlier. I think I had this entry in from like all the way back here sometime, but that's just gone off. So it's a 12-hour demand. Obviously, it would have been high risk, and obviously, you would much prefer this to have been tested like some immediately after this candle. Particularly now it has sort of weekly supply. Anyway, it's a horrible, messy chart. It's got a weekly supply and 2 weekly supply, in fact. Yeah, so I'm not really sure. I would say this is the best trade to take, but something you can watch if you want to. It has held now for a higher low, but it's back up. It's just hit weekly supply and it's in 12-hour there. But if you see it consolidate through here and actually start to make some decent upward structure, go for it. UXLINK. This was another short entry, but I've also, this is something I have actually potentially flipped long on. So I think I said on the alert for this that this was a 2 weekly supply, but because of the trend line stops, I might be inclined to use it to flip long. So it's come up into the 2 weekly supply, so has, and the weekly supply, so has given a short up there. Would like this really to flip weekly demand, but it's already made a 5-day. So I've set the alert for 5-day, and then I think there's a 5-day, a 3-day, and a daily in here. So This I think definitely thinks worth looking for longs. You know, it's got a lot of stops that it could go for up here. It's got this big gap that it hasn't filled. It is holding this demand. It has just swing failed the low and then taken a retest. The negative is that it's got a 2-week supply, but the positive is, you know, it's got this demand. So I would, yeah, like to watch that to see if it's going to give another move up to these higher zones. VIDT. Just checking the stream again. This I actually think this has been delisted from a couple of places because I saw this on some lists earlier. So I don't know. It's still not on all of them, but I think the delisting is coming, so it's kind of messing around. And I think that was the delisting, and then it pumped. Like some of them dump immediately on the delisting announcement and don't come back. Like you can see that on Troy, I think, it barely got any bounce. But then in contrast, AERGO that I started with, and AERGO really came, like dumped and then really pumped. SNT I think had a mini dump and then a mini pump. And the same with this. This has a mini dump and then a mini pump. I mean, this is what I'm calling mini only because the delisting ones normally end up like close to zero. But yeah, I had a short off the monthly supply there and a long off the daily demand down there. So those are pretty nice. So now I run through into the 2-week supply up here. I've got 2 levels, 2 and 3 week supply up there. And I had an alert there for 5-day inside. So yeah, my overall bias on this is bearish because of 2 monthly supply. But also if it's being delisted, yeah, so be careful, just check the delisting dates on this if you choose to trade this. But yeah, there's not anything to trade now really because that obviously those alerts went a couple of days ago. Well, this I think is one of the only ones that failed, and there's 2 of them actually that failed, that they're coming, so this is one of the ones that failed. So again, I had an aggressive short alert for a daily supply in here. To be fair, it hadn't broken the low, but because it made a double bottom. Let's go down to the lower time frame. It had made a double bottom, 3821, 3826. So yeah, this low hasn't quite taken out that low. So therefore, because it had a daily supply, I thought it was worth looking for potentially a move down to take out those 2 lows. But it was a little bit too aggressive, and also has this 3-day. And the other thing, I mean, like again, this is a very new structure. It is a 3-day as well. Yeah, that was my mistake actually, because I thought I saw that afterwards, and it has actually now gone higher. But I think I thought the 3-day had been tested previously, but then when I looked at this candle, this hasn't. You can see it hasn't quite hit the 3-day on that test. So it then didn't surprise me that it came through the daily to retest the 3-day. And then I thought maybe it would get the rejection there, but the problem is by the time it closed, it had then created a daily demand. So hence we're now heading back up again. And this is still, something it's brand new. It could just go up from here, but what you're looking for, if you get the rejection in here, is that potential. Why doesn't it want to give me my brush anymore? I guess the other problem with this is, well, why is my trading views just freezing up now? I think it's because it's drawing secret things all over the chart, because I had the brush selected, but it hasn't. It's drawing them but not showing them. No, they're not in my, oh, I don't know what's going on with this. Anyway, sorry, so my comment is that I can see this wicks going far up. I want to see how high that goes. Okay, there we go. Okay, so yeah, I put in the all-time high on BUBB there, and then obviously this is the all-time high on the MEXC chart. So again, this could still run up to go to those zones, but if it does play out potentially an inverse head and shoulders here, there finally it's working. If this works, this could be a very good trade. If it doesn't work, then flip long, and then you've got a lot of space for it to potentially go higher. So really, you're just looking for that reaction there. So that's definitely something you should have on the radar for both directions. If you get the reaction here for a short stop above there, then great. If you don't, if it runs through, then look for longs on the retest. And then what have we got? I don't know, another couple of alerts since I've started the stream. So we're almost at the end of the list now. So WAV was one that did work, and again I think I've added, and you can see there that I've added an alert in. So we had again an aggressive short here. I think it was actually on an 8-hour supply in here. It wasn't on the 2-day. So I think the 2-day had already been rejected. but then there was an 8-hour supply, so it did, like, so that was when the alert went, and I think it came up obviously a bit higher in the zone with that wick, but then has held it and dropped, and now has a new 8-hour supply. And again, like, my preference, like, at least this has broken the low. I would prefer this to be a lot below the low, but again, that's something that's worth looking for a short on a potential retest there. XCN is one of the other ones that failed, but again, in the comment, so I had said this is stupid actually, because I really did expect this to happen, and I said in the comment, what I was hoping, I think, with the rejection that I had here, was that it would come back down and give a retest entry. And this is kind of annoying, and this happens sometimes, so this is a bit of an annoying chart, but I'll show you kind of like what I observed from some of these. So when you've got like this probably would have been a daily demand here. So you should always keep an eye on these. So you've got a daily demand in here, and sometimes these will give a bounce. So that was certainly worth an alert, and it did give a little bounce, but already had daily supply. And by then it took so long to come down. It had a lot of like 4 or 5 day supplies and things above. So anyway, only got a small bounce off there and then continued this drift of death. But what you need to do when you see these, and particularly after giant pumps, is keep going down time frame. So I know green is an hourly, but what you'll find is this. Please load. When you start, actually I need to go to the hourly to really properly show it, but I'll just show you here because we're here now. So when you go to the lower time frames, if you see consolidations like this with a zone underneath, so it didn't quite test this zone for a start, but then you can see that it's messy, and so while on the daily it looks like a nice fine daily zone, when you go to the lower time frame, you're seeing trend line stops, you're seeing a zone after an impulse, and quite often like this has actually got a few 4 hours, 2 hours made on the way up, but you're looking for the last one before it starts consolidating, and then really that's where you want your entry. But on some of these I just don't go down low enough time frame to kind of be able to, and I can't do that on everything. But you will find that then quite often then it looks like it's, you know, it's then basically is a swing fail of this daily zone, so it takes that out, but it's holding the level below. So we go back to where it is. The problem is, I think when I saw this, is it wasn't going to give, I think I saw it maybe after at least the first green candle, and then I just thought this isn't going to give a re-entry. And yeah, so it's now gone straight through weekly supply, straight through. So I did say, I think I said in the alert that this was 5 day supply, but I said it was choppy. And again, that's what can happen when it's choppy. Okay, it was a clean 5 day supply, and it did have a decent down move away from it. So I thought it was worth looking for a possibility of a short. But when it's choppy like this, then yeah, this is what can happen. So yeah, anyway, if you want, you can look for shorts on this. It has gone up fast, so potentially might come down equally as fast, I think, and it's now at a point that you might be able to get a short. I think again, because it's one of the strongest charts, I think my alert for possible short was actually up on 2 month supply up here. So as I had this short entry in here, so what had happened is I think I had the alert for the 2 month supply, but when I looked at this chart, it hadn't even quite hit this weekly level. So it was slightly off there, so I did put an alert in here on this daily supply saying, you know, if this does work, it could get a really significant move down. And it obviously did get quite a significant move down from there if you were willing to hold it for 2 months, which you probably wouldn't be on futures. But obviously it didn't come all the way back down here, which would be the preferred long entry. But yeah, this is obviously has now taken most of the stops throughout that zone. So I think this is, yeah, you can keep an eye on this for the possibility of shorts from now, really. And then if it does continue to break out, then up there. But again, you need to go back to the lower time frames, go and see what we've got. Yeah, so it's a little bit choppy and messy, but yeah, again, just drawing those local zones, you know, when it breaks. So you can see here, this is a 2 hour chart, you know, it's made a 2 hour demand, it's held, tested it, gone up, made a new 2 hour demand, come back, tested it, etc. So you're waiting for some lower time frame to start breaking to see the downtrend potentially start to develop. But yeah, that isn't ready yet, so just give it some time and yeah, watch what zones are made. Then finally we have a ZRC, which was crazy. Not sure what I had on this. Okay, so this is really nice. So I had a really nice, I remember when I did the end of the watch list, I put this as a sort of wild card and aggressive short entry on that 3-day supply, because I think it had just created the weekly. And that had a great move off there, but obviously now it's just kind of bounced wherever it felt like bouncing. I don't know if I had this alert for 2-day or for the weekly. Like sometimes I just sort of say, oh, this is 2-day supply. So that's obviously had quite a nice reaction off that 2-day. And I think with this I was thinking, you know, maybe I could look for a long on this. So yeah, the problem is again, so it's already tested that daily demand, so I need to see, I just need more price action on this, because this, yeah, this can go either way for me at the moment. You know, this could, you know, it's I've done the 2-day supply in there. I did not mean to do that. This brush situation isn't working very well today, but yeah, it's got the two-week supply here anyway, even though I've alerted the 2-day. You know, obviously we've still got this downtrend, consolidation, fall off a cliff. This could still be retested and continue the downtrend. And that's sort of my preferred course of action. Or alternatively, you know, we are going to come, doesn't really want to select the brush, or alternatively we are going to come back down here and then start a new uptrend. But I need to see that test first, you know, similar to this, you know, that we had this sort of strong move, it shorted it down and I had a long entry there. Then I thought this might hold, so this is another example of a trend line that then broke down. I thought this might hold. I think I had some sort of a demand in there that I then looked for a long entry on. You can see the green cross. But then ultimately it broke down and then got the short before it broke down. And this is also why, like, so for, I don't know, anybody who doesn't follow me, it's like, well, people say to me, are you bullish or bearish? And I'm like, I can never really answer the question, because it really just depends what time frame you're trading. So while entries like these might not look like good entries in inverted commas, like as in, you know, it didn't go miles back up from there, but from the way me and the group trade, that potentially, I don't know, I might not have picked the best example, but it still went up for like, you know, at least a day, 24 hours, and that for me is a good trade. You know, so I'm just trading a zone that I expect to bounce on, and then I would look, you know, whatever supply was, but I'm not looking to hold it up here necessarily. And even with the shorts, again, like, so something like this, I would potentially look to hold for longer. I don't know if I would hold this all the way down there, but you potentially would look to hold for longer because we're in a downtrend and it's breaking down. But at this point, you know, the longs, yeah, we're in a downtrend, so a long entry isn't really a sensible thing to do anyway. And then you're just waiting, you know, to see what kind of reaction you get. Then in contrast, you get something like this when I put the 2 aggressive one in, and it just runs straight through it, so there's not even a trade to be taken. But at the moment, I'm still erring on shorts being better, but slightly more, probably slightly more tentative than previously. That's kind of the only change I would have, that obviously we are seeing now some stronger up moves, but we still really need to see those come back down and whether they're going to hold test. So, you know, we look at these green numbers, so F for example, but it's come straight into weekly supply. So is this going to hold a test there, here at the start of the consolidation, make a higher low? At this point, I don't know. At this point, this is still a downtrend. However, the strength of these moves compared to this faff that we've had previously is a good thing. But then we still just need to see, you know, like, are they going to come back similar to here? Is it going to come back down to ground zero and then hold for another test, at least for a higher low? In this case, still made a lower high, but yeah, so that's all the alerts I've had in the last few days, and obviously there's heaps more on this list, and obviously again I'm phenomenally far behind as always. I have had actually a couple of hits since I've been on stream. Let me just light another cigarette. Okay, so Mog I already talked about. I don't recall talking about, did I talk about AO? Yeah, I did. That was a risky one. BMT, this chart is just mental. I was looking at this going, wow. So I think, you know, there was a 4-hour demand or something, or a 2-hour demand there for possible long. There was this, I think, was a daily or something, but it gave nothing. But it really has just been the drift of death from hell until it came all the way back to ground zero. Now, and what I've actually alerted. Let's see what 1 day supply possible 2 week. So it is a 2 week supply, I think, or I've just drawn it too early. Obviously it's a 2 week, giant 2 week. Oh, it's actually not 2 week yet. But it is a daily supply, but something like this. Okay, so now we have again got strength. This, I'm going to put an alert for a possible long. So again, as you can see, and as I've said repeatedly, we are still very tentative on these. But something like this, worth looking for the long, because, so it's come down right at the start of this big impulse move up. I mean, like, crypto's a tough one because, you know, people say, oh, that means there's demand for this, but, you know, if it's demand that's only lasted 2 days in this case, just because it's a strong move up, it's then admittedly taken a month to come down, if not longer. But, you know, then this doesn't hold because it just wasn't enough and people aren't confident enough in the market to jump back in. Again, the history isn't there. But if it has made a higher low here, if it doesn't confirm this 2 week supply anyway, I mean, preferably this candle again will push higher before coming back to test this. But again, there is a chance here that this is the bottom. Hence it's worth looking for if it can give a retest. But if it confirms, assuming it doesn't die in the next 5-6 hours. Save. Yeah, so possible short off there now. Bit of a risky short now because obviously we are so low, and this again, this is the difficulty, that I'm still being aggressive on the shorts, as I said, because my bias is still short. But obviously this is very much in two minds, as if it's going to hold a higher low by a hair, and also if it does go up, like the reason it's worth the long, because if it does go up, it can potentially take out, it could just run a giant green candle up there. So I will also keep an eye on this on the lower time frames, because it may or may not come back to my entry on that. At least it's starting to show a bit of red now, and I need to see if Bitcoin's coming down or not. But yeah, this is definitely something that's worth keeping an eye on, because if the long does work from here, then it's got scope to really do quite a big move if it wants to. But not dissimilar to XCN that we just saw. And then finally, SERAPH. What is this? Yeah, it was also another little bit of a challenging one. It had this really nasty rogue wick on MEXC, but it did have a monthly demand, and then it came down, you know, so it bounced off the monthly, didn't make a higher high, so then didn't make a higher low, came down deeper inside the monthly demand to a 2 week level. But again, when it bounced, unable to make a higher high. So potentially we expect it to take out this low now and come down to here. So I will set an alert for that, because I guess that's a 5-day demand there. Let me just check. Assuming so I just ignore that wick, because that wick probably isn't on any other exchanges. Presuming this is actually traded on other exchanges. So yeah, it has come back up into 5-day supply. So obviously again, we got the short entry on 5-day supply. In here, I was a little bit early, and then yeah, so the second test got the bigger move, and now it's back down in this 12-hour demand. So this is not the world's best, sorry, 8-hour demand in fact, not the world's best entry because of the structure. So the structure still says we could go down here, but yeah, it was one that I thought was worth watching. So you can keep an eye on that for the rest of the day. But again, if this does, if it doesn't bounce soon and creates daily supply, I'll probably leave it alone until it gets lower now. But yeah, that's something to consider. So I'll just add this to my watch list. Yeah, that's my watch lists. Let's check out your BMT might be on here already. Take it off, add it back. And even SERAPH actually isn't on. Just so I can keep an eye on them a bit later. Okay, and then I did have a request yesterday in chat for a few things. So I thought I'd do those here. So a couple of updates that I put in the channel, in the Telegram channel. So if you're following that, you would see these. So FARTCOIN obviously did really well, despite, come on. So just to be conscious of. So again, this I haven't traded in both directions. This has all been long up. So I did some very comprehensive analysis of this when we were up here, and I said, you know, that I had this long here because it was all weekly demand, but there was light structures I likened to POPCAT up here. So I looked for the short and obviously got the start of that really big move, which was nice. Then when we came down here into 2-week demand, that I had an alert, but obviously it just got a bounce initially and then came down much deeper. Then we, hi Baloots, how are you? Then obviously we came down into the daily much deeper in the 2-week demand, and then we got multiple entries on various daily, 2-day. It was really choppy and difficult on the way up, but there was sort of 3-day, 2-day daily demands. I think some of them actually got a bit front run in there, but multiple alerts through here. And then finally I had an alert go for this weekly level here, which it then front ran the level by like 0.005 cents, which I put in the Telegram channel earlier. So I'm just seeing some news on, hold on, let me just check what that news is. Trump overturns IRS rule on crypto brokers with new bill. That was yesterday. I'll read that later. I thought it might be just imminent news, so I thought I should check it. So anyway, FARTCOIN's difficult, and again, a bit like XCM that I showed a minute ago, because it's got so much chop here, I was reluctant to look for shorts. Did actually, and I did say when it got to here verbally that it was at a 5-day supply, I think, there, so I said just keep an eye on that, because that was when I would expect the pullback to there, but because of the chop I didn't actually put a short entry. And then similarly here, it's now in weekly supply, but it does have a clean 3-day up here on the 3-day chart, but it's still messy on the lower time frames. But so I put that there just to be aware, and again the 61 fib. And then again on this, structurally it's like what is it going to do? So, you know, is this an impulse correction, and now we're just going to get into another impulse? Or is this impulse correction like A, B, C? And C can be to here, or it could be the higher low. So you can have an ABC zigzag or an ABC triangle. So we might again get some sort of structure like that. And I did do a comparison a few days ago, again in the Telegram channel with, or actually no, when I posted this back on, I think the 20th it was, 20th of March, saying, just kind of looking at SHIB and Pepe and things like that. And I think it was difficult because I think SHIB had 6 months of consolidation before it then went for a new high. And while also, I should say, while this chart looks quite bullish, if you look on the log scale, if you look on the linear scale, it obviously looks significantly uglier. And, you know, obviously came down to a decent zone to look for longs, which is why I was long biased all down here. But, you know, so if you look at the SHIB chart in comparison, I think the SHIB had 6 months of consolidation sideways before running for the second time and didn't break the high. I think one of the other ones I looked at, I can't remember now, maybe it was MOG, did break the high, you know, and was a quicker consolidation before going back up. I can't remember now, Bonk, Pepe, I looked at a few of the meme coins to see what happens, and how long they consolidate for after these initial runs, and it was mixed. I think one was quite quick, but most of them were quite slow. So anyway, like I said, this looks significantly better if you look at it on the log chart. So I have set a new alert. So it has made a new daily demand and a 5-day demand in this big purple zone here. So I have set an alert there that the 1 day obviously would be more aggressive. Obviously people are still looking like they want to buy this. So unless you start to see a big sell-off through here, and I think, it's possible you may not. So again, with these slow grinds down, what you're getting, yes, you're getting buyers trapped, but they also do get time to get out with less loss. It's not like when you've seen a massive red candle down and people are properly trapped at the zone before the breakdown. So when it's slow like this, then you can be more inclined to run through it. So here, and again, the drop from here, from this resistance here, is I'm more inclined to think that's profit taking. People seeing a natural resistance, with the wicks here, wasn't anything to the left, but you know, with the wicks over there, people seeing as that natural profit taking rather than aggressive shorting, which would have pushed it lower. However, again, you know, we are getting to the 61 fib, so I wanted to see where the top was before I kind of really looked at what I might think the bottom would be. But so let's say that it does top out at this 3-day level, then obviously the 61 of this last up move and the 70 is lower, so I would still potentially consider another test back in this weekly zone to make that triangle, if we're going to make the triangle. But this would be the aggressive entry, so and in fact, you know, may even make a daily demand up here today. So again, if you want to be longing up here, that's entirely up to you. Personally, I don't long this high up. I would rather wait for a decent retracement. And you need to have that daily level in there as well in case it drops through this consolidation a bit lower in there. But again, it's difficult now. Well, once it goes up, it's difficult because it's messy again. When it comes back down, it's unclear. Even with this entry, I was a bit like, not sure if this is going to drop to this level, 32,325 there, because that was a daily that wasn't quite tested. So I guess we can only see what happens. But yeah, just be conscious it's a little bit choppy. So supply isn't clean really for shorts and long isn't really clean. The long here is clean if it holds, and if it's not like going to do a bigger rejection, having like done a retest of this drop. And then POPCAT was the other one because I was asked those two at the same time previously. So when I was asked about this, again, it was really nice. Like I said, they said there were people saying they were looking to long it back, I think on the 24th of March or 20th of March, maybe it was 24th of March, I think maybe it was when I asked the questions. And I said no, I still wanted lower, and that even though I was tentative on this because I still think this can go all the way down there if it wants to, but my preference for longs was on this 2-day demand. So obviously it's got a really nice bounce off there. Still got 2 week supply and weekly supply, but obviously this is starting to look quite nice. If it can get through that 2 week, that would be great. But it's coming through already through the immediate weekly there. So again, it's still tentative, still may collapse if it wants to, still under higher time frame supply. But at least now it's holding a 2-day demand in a bigger monthly demand, so it does have this bigger monthly. It's the 2-day at the base of that monthly after this pump. So again, this could now get a bigger move and start to follow FARTCOIN if it wants to. So yeah, I'm going to reset an alert here as well for possible long on a retest. But just a bit, you know, if you're in this again, just be conscious at the moment at least that it hasn't broken supply. So in a perfect world, and again, you don't always get a perfect world. In a perfect world, we come up and at least break this high, if not, you know, even this high, and then get the test of this. So, you know, even if that means we do that first, structurally that would be perfect. And at least it would say that this demand is going to be strong because it's had a decent move away from it. You know, better obviously for it not to happen, take weeks to happen. You know, you might expect to take that high before then moving. Alternatively, it might still make a lower high. You know, we're still in this kind of down channel, so we might still get a lower high here, but then it can still give the higher low if it wants to. So similar to here, that, you know, that there obviously we would have been hoping for a bounce there, and then it's got the higher low, but in this case, you know, it hasn't made the higher high and has eventually broken lower. But either way, like, you might still, I just deleted the cross by mistake, you could still potentially get the entry there, and hopefully it won't take off without us. Let me just look at the lower time frames, and again, by all means, like if you're wanting to FOMO in, or, you know, desperate to get an entry on POPCAT, I suspect it's gone a bit off the boil. Like, I certainly wouldn't suggest going in now. It's far too close to supply here. But if you want to try and get an entry here more aggressively, or, you know, this is a 12-hour, if you go and look at the 8 or 4 hour and see if there are more aggressive entries for you to get in, that's up to you. So that's those two, and then the ones I was asked about were ENA. Maybe I should check that. I think it was ENA. Let me just check that quickly. And that's going to take me time to find it, so I won't. I'll assume it's ENA. So ENA is a really tough one. Like, and I wanted to be bullish on this, kind of like everybody else here. As you can see, I had lots of trying to get long entries before, you know, the couple here that failed. Again, so this is an example, like I was saying on POPCAT, you know, that you can get these higher low entries, and that one actually, you know, probably might or might not have got stopped out on that one, I'm not sure, but obviously these would have been stopped out or break-evens. But you're trying to get the higher low entries, that's fine, but if you're getting them without the higher high, they are lower probability and higher risk. So that's exactly what happened here. Then obviously I was trying to get higher lows, and the reason here I was doing it, so at least do it where you're somewhere of value, that this is a giant 3-month demand. It had come deeper inside it. I think this was a weekly, yeah, so we're inside a weekly or a 2-weekly demand inside a larger 3-month demand. So I think it's worth looking for those and being aggressive about it, so you can get the good entries when they work. But like I say, know what you're doing. You know, this was still trying to get a higher low, unable to make a higher high, and then here eventually ended up breaking down lower. The problem I now have with this for the bulls is that what it did at the same time, I'll just hide my drawings so I can show you. We have the mouse actually work, would be nice. So we had that 3-month demand, and what it's now done is flipped it to 3-month supply, and has already tested it. So I have set an alert there for 2-week supply and 3-month, and there's a daily inside it apparently, which I can go and look at in a minute. But it's not. It's again. So it was a stronger demand than it was supply. It hasn't actually broken demand because it hasn't broken down this level. But it has, like, the more recent price action has closed below that green candle of all the people who longed in there and flipped it to supply. So that then, in turn, now makes me very nervous about longing this. It also had a monthly, it was a monthly demand, I think that was why I was looking for all those long entries. And it's possible it's swing failed this monthly demand here, it's just taken the stops and it will go back up. But with that 3-month supply in there, it makes me, yeah, not confident for looking for longs on this. And again, like, it doesn't mean it's not going to go up, but my bias on this is more to the short side. For me, like, I don't want to be longing right under a 3-month supply. You know, if it goes up past, so we had that, so this is the 2-week. In fact, the 2-week hasn't confirmed yet. I think I'm assuming the 2-week is going to confirm, but whether it will or not, I don't know. I think it might already be a weekly. Yeah, so it's already got a weekly supply in there. Anyway, I'm just change that alert because that might hit before the end of the weekend, and then nobody will know what I'm talking about. No, it doesn't want to play ball at the moment. My computer and Tradingview are not playing ball today. But yeah, so with that new weekly or potentially 2-weekly supply being at the same as the 3-month level, 3-month level already been tested. When that would have been, oh, there we go. Drawings are back. I think the 3-month, actually, I did look earlier, I think the 3-month level was literally tested on the 1st or 2nd of April, and it's come down off there. So if the 3-month supply is to play out, then I expect this to take out the low. So at the moment, I've still got a long entry on this 2-day, 3-day demand down here as possibility. You know, it is possible it'll make a higher low, and the 3-month supply is enormous. So, you know, there is certainly, you know, even if it could very easily, you know, maybe it's bounced there on the swing failure, swing fail, so there's probabilities for everything. You know, there's a swing fail there taking out stops from there. Maybe that means it'll take out the stops from here. So maybe you're going to get a move up before coming back down to test there. You know, maybe it'll get as high as here, or maybe it's just going to get enough just to take the stops, go to the 3-month level there, or this daily supply in it, and then come back down. So it's hard to know. Or alternatively, which would be my preferred probability, is that we're going to come up and test this 2-week supply and drop down into there and then have the move. So that to me is higher probability, but I could be wrong. So, hi Ahmad. Yeah, so obviously, like I said, I'm not always right. These are becoming now, like in situations like this where we do have history and potential support, these are becoming aggressive short entries. So, like, I wouldn't necessarily say, and you certainly shouldn't take them blind anyway, but something like this, particularly don't take it blind because of the trend line stops above it. But yeah, I can't really be long biased on this Oh yeah, that's what I've said. So there's a 2 week supply and 3 month with the daily. So it could be, the crosses there, but obviously that's I'd be looking, around here, either at the level or higher inside for possible short entries. It has flipped to daily demand. If it then starts to flip higher time frame demands, if it flips this weekly to a demand, then sure, you can start looking for those long entries. But until that happens, it's still short bias from the way I trade anyway. So anyway, that's ENA. And like I say, so while again I have the long entry here, if the 3 month supply does play out, then you would expect it to take out the low. So overall, I'm not particularly bullish on ENA. The other one was, I got this wrong first time, it was ONDO. So actually, in my head I had ONT was the request, and then I looked at this chart, because normally people ask me about the ones they think are bullish, and I looked at this chart and I was like, my god, why are you asking me about ONT? It looks horrendous. Then I realised actually no, it's not ONT, it's ONDO. So ONDO actually again isn't bad. So I haven't, so the other two, ONDO and SUI is the other one. I haven't analysed. So ENA I looked at before this stream, but this one I haven't. So I'm going to have to do it a little more from scratch. So we have, so this had a 3 month demand, larger 3 month, it's held above it. Oh gosh. So I'm going to have to do it during the stream, but then obviously if my chart takes forever to load. Okay, so it does have a 3 month demand, but a weak one, it closed above it, but closed on a swing failure of the high. So wasn't the best 3 month demand, and by the looks of it, I didn't put any long entries on it, so that's good, because I didn't get a bounce off the top of it. Now we've come back down, if my chart ever loads, into a monthly zone inside of 3 month. This must be a Tradingview thing, because this, if my internet goes dodgy or my computer goes dodgy, it's normally the stream that goes dodgy, not Tradingview. And I've noticed also Tradingview have made some of this annoying changes today that I've messaged them about, saying how do I give feedback to your annoying changes, because their UX designers need to be shot. Keep making these annoying changes. Anyway, my drawings aren't coming back at the moment, but you can see there's a monthly demand here that's getting the bounce at the moment. So this I'm definitely more bullish on. Have a drink while this takes its sweet time loading. If this is going to do this, I'm going to have to, I think, sign off and go and have dinner, because this will be intensely irritating if it doesn't. Feel free to ask me a question while waiting for the chart to load. If you're interested in anything, just ask any question and I can at least talk and answer it while the chart is being intensely annoying. Wow. And I hate this feeling that when your computer slows down, that you feel then inclined to do more. Like I want to click things. And then obviously that potentially makes the situation significantly worse if you start clicking away if I start clicking and changing the time frames and things like that. Why is it being so annoying? To be fair, my CPU is at 100%, so maybe that's it. But I feel like this is a Tradingview issue, not a me issue. So let me actually try and go on the Bitcoin chart, and then I can see if it's a me issue. Okay, so Bitcoin has closed, so we've closed that gap and taken out some of these trend line stops. Maybe I just need to not load a chart. Do that fib again later. Where's this wick come up to? So the wick has just come up and closed that gap, I think. Yeah. So we've closed the weekend gap, but like I said, we still have the gap above that didn't close from Wednesday when we had this big drop on Wednesday. But has closed the immediate gap, so that's one thing. And ETH is still looking weak as shit. So Bitcoin again, so we're looking for that rejection from anywhere from now to up to the upper gap. Really, I don't care about the gap once CME's closed for the weekend, and then still looking for the longs down there. So nothing's changing on this. If it makes a daily demand, I might, you could potentially look for scalps off 82,500, like after midnight, after 1 AM, back in daylight saving. Let me see if ONDO has now loaded itself. Wow, why is this being so annoying? I don't know why this is being annoying. Oh, there we go. It's moved all my drawings sideways, but at least it's loaded the time frame. So anyway, I missed doing these. So all my drawings have moved, and they'll probably slot themselves back into place in a minute. But you can see, so we come off monthly demand down here. We've got weekly and 2 weekly supply up there. I think I haven't. There we go. That's better. So coming off monthly demand. So this, yeah, and obviously I had an entry, I think, for a more aggressive one for the 3 week at the top, because a lot of these had 3 week. I don't want, I'm scared to change the chart now. A lot of these had a 3 week demand followed by a monthly demand, and a lot of them came off the 3 week before then coming back down deeper into the monthly. So I had whatever alerts I had here more aggressively. Now we've got a weekly supply up there, 2 weekly, and a double top up here. So I don't know, I think I'd be less inclined here to look for short entries. This is a decent bounce. So I'm gonna, what I'll do actually is I need to look at this properly, and I feel like this computer isn't gonna let me, see it's not even showing me my drawing toolbar for this. I feel like the computer isn't gonna let me do this properly right now. So what I might do is just chart these, come off stream and chart these, and then throw them in the channel. Can I? Oh, I can do the template from here. So this might flip a weekly. This is just hating me now. Anyway, I've already done a couple of hours on this stream, and I've done a lot of alts. So I will throw ONDO and SUI in the channel later. I'll have a quick look at SUI if it's going to load before I sign off. But obviously ONDO doesn't really want to load for me and do what it should be doing at the moment. Let me see if SUI loads. So for some reason either Tradingview's on having a slow moment, or my computer's having a slow moment. But I'll put analysis on these in the Telegram channel later, either tonight or possibly tomorrow actually, because it's quite late now and I need to eat food. You've had a lot of alts already, so yeah, if you haven't been watching the start of the stream, go back through. I'll do the timestamps later, and you can have a look at all the alts and the ones that I've said are potentially tradable from all the alerts that have come in. SUI also looking nice, actually. So this has come off, so it's 2 week demand, 3 month demand. So this definitely, you should be looking for longs on this. But it's still under weekly supply. And obviously it doesn't want to load my drawing toolbar again. So you can see it's still under weekly supply here. But it's come back down off 3 month demand and whatever zone that was, like 5 day zone inside 3 month demand. But again, we need to see, it's like everything else, we need to see supply breaks. So refer back to here, for example, that it would have had weekly supply, it's come through that, then it's given a couple of tests, and then you get the move, and that's what you'd be looking for here. So potentially more weeks, so potentially 2 or 3 weeks, you want to see if it's going to come through this supply, consolidate through here, and then you start looking for the bigger move up. And I think, I think I previously obviously had a short entry up there, and it's got a weekly supply in there, but something like this I probably wouldn't look for shorts on, because I'd probably expect, if the market's strong enough, that this is going to have a decent move. What I just hope for is that we're going to get, so here, let's say July 2024 to September 2024, so that's like 6 months. No, I can't count, that's 3 months. But at least 3 months of kind of at least, yes, you may not have caught the low, you're getting in later, but at least 3 months of sideways, or at least a month of sideways from the bounce to then get the entry for the big move. So what you're looking for on SUI here is for a break of this supply. You want ideally this close above that line for this to flip to demand, then you look for long entries on this demand. However, unless my computer's going to suddenly miraculously speed up again, which I don't think is going to happen, I will start looking on SUI and ONDO. I will have a look to see if there are any dailies that are worth potentially getting aggressive entries in on the long side. But yeah, obviously my computer doesn't really want to play ball for the end of this alt session. Nothing new to report on Bitcoin and Ether since I've been streaming, and let me just check where the indices are going to end up for the end of the day. Yeah, so again, they haven't really gone anywhere significant. They're just kind of in these 4-hour supplies, and Dow Jones may have failed that zone. But yeah, I'll see if these are going to potentially may create 8-hour or 12-hour demands and things like that, but I'll see what the closes look like. And I'll try and do another stream over the weekend just with what I think is going to happen. But again, I don't think much is going to change. Like these indices, they all made daily demands, which I was hoping to be tested. Same as Bitcoin did test the daily, but I wanted that lower entry on Bitcoin. All of these, it's the same. I kind of want that lower entry ideally, which I may or may not get, but that would be like where I would look for longs on these and where I would look for longs on Bitcoin in the bigger picture. And yeah, still isn't loading. But yeah, anyway, so I will sign off. Please like and follow if you are enjoying the stream. Oh, finally we've got 3-day on Sui, but all the drawings have moved again, which is why the chart looks crazy. Anyway, there we go, flipped back into place. Yeah, so I will. Yeah, so please join the Telegram channel if you're watching this to the end, and I will put in ENA, Sui, and Ondo with if there's any entries and things in there later, and a bit of analysis. And please like and follow if you like the stream, because that supports me doing what I'm doing and lets me know I'm helping you, which makes me more motivated to do it when I'm just doing it for fun/free. And yeah, give me a shout if you have any questions, and I hope you all have a good weekend.